If you've ever, just stared at your pay stub and tried to decode that whole alphabet soup of acronyms and deductions, it can feel like trying to read a completely foreign language.
Oh, absolutely. It's like a math test you didn't study for.
Right. Now, I want you to imagine scaling that confusion up. Imagine you run a business, and suddenly you have to decode all those withholdings, not just for your home country, but for employees sitting in, like, London, Berlin, and Chicago all at the same time?
Yeah, that is a massive headache just waiting to happen.
It really is. Well, welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are taking your sources. Specifically, we're looking at the documentation for the APS accounting and stock control software. And we're unpacking what I can only describe as the final boss of international business, which is global payroll compliance.
The final boss. I love that.
So if you're looking to understand how technology is actually solving these incredibly complex real-world problems without the info overload, you are definitely in the right place.
Yeah, because it really is the ultimate test for a growing company.
Right.
You have this moment where a small to medium enterprise decides, hey, we're going to expand globally.
Right. Time to scale.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they immediately slam face first into this massive bureaucratic wall, managing varying tax brackets, all these mandatory social contributions, entirely different legal frameworks. I mean, usually that requires hiring an outsourced HR team for every single new jurisdiction you enter.
Which is just terribly expensive.
It becomes a logistical and financial nightmare almost overnight.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because looking at our sources, APS originally built its reputation focusing on Middle Eastern markets, right? But this documentation outlines a pretty massive expansion into Western economies.
Yes, specifically the USA, the UK, and Germany.
Right. And I think it serves as a really brilliant case study in how AI-driven software is fundamentally trying to tame the notoriously labyrinthine tax codes of the West.
To really grasp how the software does this, we kind of have to look at the mechanics of the problem itself.
Lay it out for us.
Well, you can't just copy and paste a localized payroll spreadsheet across borders. Like a static formula in an Excel cell doesn't know when a foreign parliament suddenly passes a new tax law. Right?
Oh, right. It's just dumb math at that point.
Exactly. So APS's payroll module centralizes all this with what they call an AI compliance shield.
An AI compliance shield. Okay, sounds very sci-fi.
It does, but practically, rather than a human HR manager frantically refreshing government websites every morning, the software itself acts as an active monitor. It continually crawls for legislative changes across all these multiple international jurisdictions.
So it's essentially acting as a real-time translation engine between a foreign government's legal code and, your company's bank account.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
To see how that actually functions, let's dive into the specific hurdles here. And I want to start with the US and the UK, because I always think of managing international payroll like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube, right? But the colors keep changing depending on which country you're currently standing in.
Oh, for sure. The rules completely shift.
Right. And if we think about the American tax system, it isn't just about taking a flat percentage off the top. It relies really heavily on cumulative thresholds. So how does the APS system physically manage that for the United States?
So the U.S. is a perfect example of this layered complexity. Out of the box, the APS module handles FICA taxes automatically.
That's the Federal Insurance Contributions Act, right? The one that funds Social Security and Medicare.
You got it.
Yeah.
But the software isn't just applying a static multiplier. It actively calculates the 6.2% Social Security tax while maintaining a continuous running memory of every single employee's cumulative earnings.
Because it has to cap that tax eventually, right?
Exactly. It has to cap it at the $168,600 wage base.
Meaning the very moment an employee's total annual earnings hit like $1 over $168,600, the system has to just inherently know to automatically shut off that specific withholding.
Yes. And doing that manually for a roster of, say, 500 employees, that sounds like a recipe for a massive compliance fine.
Oh, yeah. Human error there would be huge.
Which is exactly why a dynamic system is so necessary. And, it does the exact same thing for Medicare.
Oh, does Medicare have a cap too?
Well, no. It calculates the standard 1.45% Medicare tax, but it also monitors for the extra 0.9% Medicare surcharge. And that surcharge kicks in dynamically only for high earners.
Ah, I see. So it's tracking all these moving targets per person.
Right. Furthermore, it manages federal income tax by using digital equivalents of the IRS Form 15T bracket tables.
So no more paper forms shoved in a filing cabinet somewhere.
Exactly. It maintains digital, fully active versions of W-4 forms for every single employee so it can track their specific, individualized withholdings without anyone touching a piece of paper.
Okay, so the U.S. system is this complex web of dynamic thresholds and individualized forms. But the whole philosophy of taxation just completely shifts when we cross the Atlantic.
Oh, totally.
When you look at the UK's setup in these sources, it's not just a matter of swapping out the percentages. The underlying structure actually changes.
It is a complete paradigm shift.
Yeah.
In the UK, APS integrates directly into the payee system.
Pay as you earn.
Right. So instead of the American FICA structure, the software is calculating national insurance contributions based on highly specific stepped bands.
Stepped bands. How does that look in the software?
Well, the system automatically handles a 12% rate, but only for earnings that fall within a very, very specific window, specifically between £12,570 and £50,270.
Okay, and what happens when you make more than that?
Any earnings above that upper limit actually trigger the software to apply a sharply reduced 2% rate.
Wait, I have to stop you and push back on this for a second.
Sure.
We're talking about highly specific windows and dynamic rates. But ultimately, at the end of the day, human beings are still sitting at a computer configuring this software, right?
Well, yes, someone has to run the payroll.
Right. So what happens if an HR manager sitting in New York who has no idea how UK law works accidentally types in the wrong tax code? Or they just ignore a recent parliamentary update to those national insurance bans? Doesn't the whole automated system just run with poison data?
See, that is the exact vulnerability the AI compliance shield is engineered to prevent. It does not just sit there passively waiting for a user to hit execute.
It doesn't.
No. The mechanism actively cross-references the user's input with current legislative databases. So the system will throw a hard alert to the administrator before applying any out-of-date figures.
Oh, wow. So it physically interrupts the workflow.
Exactly. Literally stops them. It also automatically applies the latest HMRC tax codes. Like there's the standard 1257L code, which dictates an employee's personal allowance. The system just knows it.
And what about all the paperwork? The UK loves its tax paperwork.
APS handles that too. When it comes to reporting, it generates all the mandatory compliance forms automatically. So if an employee leaves the company, boom, it generates the P45. At the end of the tax year, it creates the P60.
It's essentially acting as a guardrail against human error.
Precisely.
Okay, so the US and the UK are highly intricate systems. But looking through the documentation, if those two countries are complex clockworks, the German tax system looks like it was designed to break the clock entirely.
Oh, Germany's a whole different beast.
It really represents a totally different level of difficulty. It practically blurs the line between corporate payroll and someone's personal life.
Germany is absolutely the ultimate stress test for any payroll software. The level of localization required goes so far beyond just federal income brackets. The system has to integrate deeply into an employee's personal demographics.
Yes, and there is one detail in the source material that made me do a complete double take.
The church tax.
Yes, the software actively calculates church taxes. How does that even become the responsibility of a standard corporate payroll department?
It's such a fascinating structural difference, isn't it? In Germany, the state actually collects the church tax. They call it the Kirchensteuer on behalf of recognized religious communities.
And they just use businesses to do it.
Yeah, they use the corporate payroll system as the collection vehicle.
Yeah.
So APS has to automatically calculate this tax, which usually sits at like 8 or 9%.
Wow.
But the software has to determine the correct rate based on the specific federal state the employee resides in, and then map that against their declared religious affiliation.
Okay, so the software engine literally has to cross-reference an employee's personal religion with their geographic coordinates just to get one single line item on the pay stub correct. That is wild.
It is wild, and it doesn't stop there either. The software also applies the 5.5% solidarity surcharge, the Solidaritätszuschlag.
Oh, right, for the reunification costs?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Plus, it has to navigate the split for health insurance contributions.
Yeah.
It has to accurately divide the financial burden between the employer and the employee based on these very strict legal ratios.
That is just layer upon layer of localized math.
And wait until we get to the Lund story lesson.
The what now?
The German tax classes. The AI has to navigate these dynamic classifications.
Yeah.
It must differentiate, for example, between Class 1, which is applied to single individuals, and Class 3, which is utilized for married couples.
Wait, really?
Oh, yeah. The entire mathematical foundation of the employee's tax burden changes based on their relationship status.
So what does this actually mean for the company trying to operate there? Because the underlying math is terrifying. If I'm an HR director, I'm panicking.
Well, so what here is Elster.
Elster.
Yes, Elster is the German government's system for electronic tax declarations. APS seamlessly ties all of this localized, hyperspecific complexity directly into that system.
He said.
Because the software handles the mapping, the demographic cross-referencing, and that direct API integration. A centralized HR team sitting in London doesn't need to retain a massive fleet of German tax law experts just to run a legally compliant payroll in Berlin. The software is acting as the universal translator.
Which brings us to a major psychological hurdle, I think. Because we've just mapped out this terrifying back-end database of global tax law, right?
Yes, it is a lot of data.
How does a human HR manager actually interact with this without suffering from massive cognitive overload? Because, I mean, let's be real. If you put a giant, endless spreadsheet of German tax classes and UK national insurance bands in front of a manager, their eyes are going to glaze over immediately.
100%.
If the interface is as complicated as the tax code itself, nobody is going to use it.
You've hit on a really crucial philosophy in software design here. A brilliant back-end is completely useless if the front end induces fatigue.
Right, because fatigue leads to mistakes.
And mistakes in payroll lead to massive legal liabilities. So the sources detail a specific interface within APS designed to solve this exact problem. They call it the Statutory Entitlements Rates Form.
Catchy name.
Right. But the important part is they have entirely rejected the traditional dry spreadsheet approach.
Okay, so if they aren't using rows and columns of numbers, what does it actually look like?
They rely heavily on visual sliders.
Sliders.
Yeah. Imagine an administrator needs to adjust the employer and employee contribution percentages, maybe for that complex German health insurance split we mentioned earlier.
Sure.
Instead of typing raw percentages into a tiny cell, they use these tactile sliders. And each slider features a color-coded gradient.
Oh, like a sound engineer's mixing board.
Exactly.
So you instantly visualize the financial split at a single glance. You physically see how the financial burden is being distributed between the corporation and the worker just based on the colors.
Precisely. It translates an abstract legal percentage into an instant visual ratio. That massively reduces the cognitive load on the user, but it actually goes a step further. The form includes a built-in tax bracket editor.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. How do you visually edit a legal tax bracket?
Well, this editor empowers administrators to easily configure those progressive tax brackets for any country we've discussed. They can define the upper and lower limits of each bracket and even program in specific exemptions.
Like the UK's personal allowance we talked about.
Exactly like that. And they do it all within a clean visual dashboard. They don't have to write a complex database query or, risk breaking a fragile spreadsheet formula.
That's brilliant. You're transforming federal tax law into a tactile visual experience. You are literally sliding a bar to comply with international law.
It really is.
That isn't just a neat visual feature, though. That's a serious risk mitigation tool.
It is. By visualizing the tax code, the system allows the manager to focus on the broader strategy of their workforce, rather than getting bogged down in the syntax of a database.
Okay, so a highly visual, tactile dashboard is fantastic when you're sitting at a desk with a giant monitor.
Sure.
But the reality of modern management is mobile. Managers are constantly on the move. They might need to verify a compliance status from a factory floor or, approve a massive payroll run from an airport lounge.
Right.
So I assume APS handles this with a fully featured mobile app. And given how heavy the data is, there must be some sort of robust offline mode so you can approve things while you're on a flight without Wi-Fi, right?
Okay, I need to stop you right there.
Right.
Because the documentation is incredibly strict on this exact point, and it's a critical distinction.
Oh, really?
Yes. APS does use a PWA, a progressive web app for mobile access. A PWA operates through the web browser while feeling like a native app.
Okay.
However, the APS PWA mobile app works online only. It requires a continuous internet connection. There are absolutely no offline capabilities whatsoever.
None. Really? That feels almost counterintuitive for modern software. Usually companies constantly brag about their offline syncing capabilities. Why lock the user into a continuous connection?
Well, think about the mechanism of what we're dealing with here. Operating in an offline, disconnected state means operating in a data void. And when you are processing global payroll, Operating in a data void is a massive legal liability. The AI compliance shield relies on verifying the absolute latest tax brackets. It needs to check live currency conversion rates.
Oh,
It has to validate the entire payroll run
yeah.
against the current legal standards of the US, the UK, or Germany in real time.
Oh, I see it now. If you are sitting on a plane without Wi-Fi and you approve a payroll run based on a cached offline version of the German tax code from like 3 days ago,
Yeah.
and the German government just updated a Lohnsteuer class and bracket that very morning, you've just committed a massive compliance violation.
Exactly. The continuous internet connection isn't a limitation, it is a structural safety tether. You cannot risk authorizing payments based on outdated local data.
That makes total sense. The lack of an offline mode is a deliberate architectural choice to guarantee absolute legal and financial accuracy.
Precisely. The entire core promise of the software is real-time compliance. To deliver that, the mobile interface must be permanently tethered to the central truth of the live system.
Wow. It makes complete logical sense when you break down the actual stakes involved.
It really does.
Well, let's synthesize the journey we've taken through these sources today. We are looking at a platform that takes the incredibly dense, highly specific tax codes of major Western economies. It is parsing everything from the dynamic threshold of the U.S. Medicare surcharge to the strict national insurance bans of the U.K., all the way to mapping an employee's religion for the German church tax.
It's a massive amount of data.
It really is. It takes all of that heavy legislative math and funnels it into a single, visually intuitive interface with tactile sliders and color gradients. And it guards that entire process with an AI shield and a strictly online-only mobile interface to guarantee real-time accuracy.
What really stands out to me is what this means for you, the listener, and really anyone trying to navigate global business today.
How so?
Well, being well-informed about a topic like international payroll doesn't mean you need to sit down and memorize the German legal code
Right.
or U.S. federal tax forms.
Thank goodness for that.
Right. It is about understanding the mechanisms of how technology can synthesize and manage that localized complexity for us.
It's about finding the right translation engine for the bureaucracy.
Exactly.
And I think that leaves us with a final thought to mull over, something for you to explore long after this deep dive is done. If software like APS can perfectly map, update, and automate the hyper-specific, constantly shifting tax and labor laws of entirely different nations with just a visual slider, does this completely eliminate the final administrative friction of global hiring?
That's a big question.
Are we rapidly approaching a truly borderless workforce where an employee's physical location becomes completely irrelevant to the company employing them? Something to think about the next time you look at your pay stub. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.